So when John Lennon wrote the song, was he talking with something as mundane as people complaining about wet weather, or is something much deeper? Well, all depends you talk to. John Lennon said it's about people complaining about the rain, but for many people, it's an allegory for life. Now, Rain is a song by the Beatles, released on the 30th of May 66 as the B-side of their Paperback Writer single. Both songs were recorded during the sessions for Revolver, although neither appear in that album. Rain was written by John Lennon and credited to Lennon-McCartney partnership. He described it as being about people moaning about the weather all the time, but I think it's much deeper than that. This goes under psychedelic rock in a very tight 3 hours. Previous singles were Can Work It Out and Day Tripper, and then Yellow Submarine and Oliver Rigby. The song's recording contains a slowed down rhythm track, a droning bass line, and backwards vocals. Its release marked one of the first times that reverse sounds appeared on a pop album, although the Beatles used the same technique on a Revolver track Tomorrow Never Knows, recorded days earlier. Ringo Starr considers Rain his best recorded drum performance. 3 promotional films were created for the song, and he considered among the earlier precursors of music videos. One was performance, one was black and white, and one was kind of surreal. Commenting on Rain, Lennon said it addressed people moaning because they don't like the weather. Another interpretation is that the song Rain and Sun are phenomena experienced during a benign LSD trip. Lennon had sung on the importance of mind over matter in the Beatles' 63 song There's a Place. With Rain, he furthered this idea through the influences of hallucinogenic drugs. Author Nicholas Schaffner recognized it as the first Beatles song to portray the material world as illusion, a theme Lennon and George Harrison explored at length during the band's psychedelic period. So they went from smoking and drinking to marijuana to hard drugs. An early 1970s article in the Lennon-McCartney songwriting partnership, Rain was one of the songs Lennon said he wrote alone. According to Paul McCartney's recollection, he's in 97 authorized biography, many years from now, the pair collaborated on it, and the song's authorship was 70-30 to John. In what Beatles biographer Steve Turner deems an oversimplification, they acknowledge the philosophical aspect. McCartney recalled, songs have traditionally treated rain as a bad thing, and what we go on to was that it's not a bad thing. There's no greater feeling than a rain dripping down your back, like renewal. Now, according to musicologist Alan Pollock, although the Beatles recording has no sitars or other ethnic world music instruments, Rain strongly evokes the style of Indian classical music. Now, after Alan Kozine describes McCartney's bass as an ingenious counterpoint that takes him all over the fretboard, while Lennon and McCartney harmonize in fourths on a melody with a slightly Middle Eastern tinge. Now, when the Beatles began recording Rain at EMI, which is now Abbey Road, in London on 14 April 66, it was the same session as Paperback Writer. They completed their track on 16th of April with a series of overdubs before mixing on the same day. At that time, the band were enthusiastic about experimenting in the studio to achieve new sounds and effects. These experiments were showcased on their seventh album Revolver, which I think is their best album overall, but that's just me. Jeff Emmerich, who was the engineer for both sessions, described one technique he used to alter the sonic texture of the recording by taping the backing track faster than normal. When played back, slightly slower than usual speed, the music had a radically different tonal quality. The opposite technique was used to alter the tone of Lennon's lead vocal. It was recorded with the tape machine slowed down, making Lennon's voice sound higher when played back. Now, Lennon played a 65 Gretsch Nashville, Rickenbacker a 64 Rickenbacker bass, Harrison a 1964 Gibson, and Starr Ludwig drums. To boost the bass, Emmerich recorded McCartney's amplifier via a loudspeaker, which EMI technical engineer Ken Townsend had reconfigured to serve as a microphone, which is a unique technique because compared to Paperback Writer, which was, again, Beatles pop, this is a very, like I said, heavy tune. Now, the Coda of Rain includes backwards vocals, which Lennon later claimed was the first use of this technique on a record. Although Hudum Tuz, but a Sydney band, The Missing Links, had actually been released in October of the previous year, and it's Shut Mouth. Edited together from Lennon's vocal track, the backwards portion consists of singing the word sunshine, then a drawn-out rain taken from one of the choruses, and finally the song's opening line. If the rain comes down, they run their heads in Aldo Rodriguez's description, accompanied by the backing vocalist singing the song title on another track. Lennon's vocal evoked the sound of a blissed out zealot speaking in tongues in a trance-like state. Now, Lennon repeated the importance of the song in many interviews over the years, and he said that the backwards tracking, gave the Beatles kind of that avant-garde that they were looking for. Now, released as the B single in the States on the 30th May 66. In the UK, it was the Beatles' first UK single since Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out in December 65. The new record showed profound changes in the Beatles' image after the band had spent the first half of 66 largely out of the public eye because they weren't touring. Music journalist John Savage describes the two tracks as saturated and clanging guitar and Indian textures, and each reflective of a different side of the psychedelia coin. Now, in the States, the song peaked at number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100 on 9 July 66 and remained there the following week. The Paperback Writer single reached number 1 in the UK and the States, as well as Australia and West Germany. Now, Rolling Stone ranked Rain 469th on his list of the 500 greatest songs of all time in 2010 and 463rd in 2004. On a similar list, compiled by Q104.3, the song appeared at number 382. Well, Ian McDonald and Rolling Stone described Starr's drumming on the track as superb, and it's, like I said, it's quite strong. Now, the Rain eventually was mono, but was mixed in stereo in December 69 for its inclusion on Hey Jude compilation album the following year. The track subsequently appeared on Rarities in the UK and Past Masters Volume 2 in the States. Now, the Beatles created 3 promo films for the Rain, following on their first attempts with the medium for the December 65 single. Now, authors Mark Hertzgaard and Bob Spitz both recognized the 66 promos for Paperback Writer and Rain as the first examples of pure music videos. In the case of Rain, it marked a rare instance where the Beatles prepared a clip for a B-side, later examples being Revolution and Don't Let Me Down. Now, the films were directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg, of course, who had worked with the band on the television program Ready, Steady, Go. One shows the Beatles walking and singing in the gardens and conservatory of Chiswick House in West London, and it was filmed on May 20th. The other 2 clips feature the band performing at a soundstage at EMI. One was filmed in colour for the Ed Sullivan Show, and the other black and white for broadcast in the UK. Unfortunately, McCartney was injured in a moped accident on December 26, 65, 6 months before the filming of Rain, and close-ups in the film reveal a chipped tooth. McCartney's appearance in the film played a role in the Paul is Dead rumors from 69. The band also promoted the single with a rare TV appearance, miming to both songs on Top of the Pops on 16th of June. Now, there have been various covers of Rain, including by Petula Clark in 66, Dan Arbaz, Fairpoint Convention, and Todd Rundgren has also covered the song, as has Don Fogelberg, who reprised it as part of his own cover of Rhythm of the Rain. Shown and Knife covered the song on their 91 album 712, and Loa Block sings it as Boris the Frog in the Optimus Beatbugs episode 3B. Now, Auntie Partridge of XTC said it rained for his inspiration for his 1980 song Towers of London as well. Now, personnel, Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Ringo. Ringo did play tambourine. Didn't chart in Canada, number 12 in Belgium, 23 in the States, and 31 on U.S. Cashbox. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very interesting song. So, if you want to basically drop a bit of acid or get a higher stone, this is a song. And, one thing about the Beatles, he backed up their love of psychedelics with psychedelic songs. So, you have to give them what's yours. But this is not your traditional Beatles song, and I think it's starting to piss a lot of people off because they were evolving too quickly, because the Beatles went through like 65 phases between 62 and 70. I don't think the world could keep up. The famous interview that Lennon had with that lady said, Bebopaloo is all gone. They wanted the Beatles to be mop tops, and they moved on with their lives. And Rain, they were moving on. You can see the fractures in the Beatles here, because John Lennon said, if McCartney can do Yesterday, I can do Rain. So if you like what we're doing with the Beatles podcast and Behind the Tracks, let us know in a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.